The moonlit ocean shimmered as laughter echoed across the cruise deck, but deep in the corridors a nightmare unfolded. Evelyn struggled as Captain Blake's grip tightened. His breath was hot against her skin. "Let me go," she screamed, thrashing. Blake smirked. "No one's here to save you." But he was wrong. A voice, cold as death, cut through the air. "Step away from her. Now." Blake turned, his smirk vanishing. Clint Eastwood stood there, eyes sharp, jaw clenched, a storm brewing. And what happened next shook the entire ship. Please share your views in comments section about this story and subscribe my channel. For more interesting stories, Clint Eastwood had always been a man of the land. Dusty trails, old saloons, and the open sky above his head. But for once, he decided to step away from the rugged landscapes and experience something different. His girlfriend, Evelyn Carter, had convinced him that a luxurious cruise trip would be the perfect way to unwind. "This will be fun, Clint. Just imagine. Sunsets over the ocean, live music, and endless cocktails," Evelyn said, holding his arm as they stood at the port, watching the massive, majestic Queen cruise liner in front of them. Clint gave her a half-smile, his rugged face showing little emotion, but deep down he knew she was right. He had spent years fighting battles, both on the streets and in his personal life. Maybe it was time for a break. As they boarded the ship, the atmosphere was filled with elegance. Women in fine dresses, men in sharp suits, and the sound of violins playing in the background. The couple checked into their private suite, where Evelyn immediately ran to the balcony, excited about the view of the endless ocean. Clint, on the other hand, was more interested in scanning the people around him. Old habit. Years of dealing with danger had taught him to never trust a crowd, and among the finely dressed passengers, one man stood out. A tall, muscular figure dressed in a sharp white uniform with golden epaulets. Captain Donovan Blake. The captain had a commanding presence, but it was his eyes that Clint noticed. Cold, calculating, and fixated on Evelyn. At first, Clint dismissed it as nothing, but as the evening went on, he noticed how Captain Blake's gaze followed Evelyn wherever she went. Something about it didn't sit right. Later that night, Evelyn and Clint attended the grand welcome dinner hosted by the captain. He made his rounds, greeting guests, but when he reached their table, he lingered a little too long. "You must be the lucky man," Captain Blake said, shaking Clint's hand, but his eyes were on Evelyn. "I'd say I am," Clint replied, his voice calm but firm. The captain smirked. "Well, Miss Carter, if you ever need anything, my private quarters are always open." Evelyn gave an awkward smile. "I appreciate the offer, Captain, but I think I'll be just fine." Clint's eyes narrowed, but he kept his composure. He had seen men like Blake before, powerful, entitled, and used to getting what they wanted. As the night went on, Clint couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And he was right, because what happened next changed everything. The cruise was in full swing. Laughter filled the grand halls, champagne glasses clinked, and music echoed through the lavish corridors. Clint and Evelyn had spent most of their evening enjoying the night sky on the upper deck, but as the clock neared midnight, Evelyn excused herself. "I'm heading back to the suite," she said, leaning in to kiss Clint on the cheek. Clint nodded, his instincts telling him to walk her back, but she waved him off playfully. "I'll be fine, cowboy. Go enjoy your whiskey." Clint watched her walk away, but something didn't sit right. Maybe it was the way Captain Blake had looked at her earlier, or maybe it was just an old habit of trusting his gut. Meanwhile, Evelyn made her way down the dimly lit corridor toward her room. Just as she reached for the door handle, a voice behind her sent chills down her spine. Going somewhere so soon? She turned around. Captain Blake. He was standing too close, his imposing figure blocking the narrow hallway. He smiled, but there was something unsettling about it. "I was just heading to my room, Captain," Evelyn said, trying to keep her voice steady. Blake chuckled, leaning against the wall. Now, let's not be rude. It's not every day I come across a woman as stunning as you." Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. "I appreciate the compliment, but I'm tired. Good night." She turned to open the door, but Blake grabbed her wrist. "Wait," he said, his grip firm. "I was actually hoping we could talk, privately, in my cabin." Evelyn yanked her hand away, stepping back. "No, thank you. I'd rather not." Blake's face darkened. "Come on, don't play hard to get. A girl like you should know how to keep the captain happy." Her heart pounded. "I said no." But Blake wasn't the kind of man to take no for an answer. Before she could react, he grabbed her by the waist, his face inches from hers. "You'll learn to enjoy it," he whispered, forcing himself closer as she struggled. Just as his lips were about to touch hers, a deep, cold voice sliced through the air. "I'd step back if I were you." The grip on Evelyn loosened instantly. Blake's face turned pale as he felt a strong hand grip his shoulder. Slowly, he turned his head and saw Clint Eastwood standing there. Clint's blue eyes were like steel, locked onto him with deadly intent. The room went silent. Even the ocean outside seemed to pause. Clint's voice was low and controlled. Too controlled, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. "Let her go." Blake smirked, trying to cover up his fear. "Relax, cowboy. We were just having a conversation." Clint's fingers tightened around Blake's shoulder. Hard. Blake winced. Evelyn quickly stepped away, rushing to Clint's side. "You and I," Clint said, his voice dangerously quiet, "are about to have a different kind of conversation." Blake scoffed, pretending to be unfazed. "I'm the captain of this ship, old man. You're on my territory." Clint tilted his head slightly, his famous smirk appearing. "Then let's take this outside." A tense silence hung in the air as Clint Eastwood and Captain Blake stood face to face. The dim glow of the corridor lights cast long shadows, making the moment even more intense. Evelyn clutched Clint's arm, her hands trembling. She could feel the rage radiating from him, though his face remained as calm as a loaded gun. Blake forced a smirk, straightening his uniform. "Now, listen here, cowboy," he sneered. "You think you can just walk in and tell me what to do on my own damn ship?" Clint's jaw tightened. "I don't think, Captain. I know." Blake scoffed. "You don't get it, do you? I run this cruise. I have power here. One word from me, and my men will throw you off this ship." Evelyn's grip tightened on Clint's arm. "Clint, let's just go," she whispered. "He's not worth it." Clint didn't move. His piercing eyes stayed locked on Blake, scanning him like a hunter studying his prey. Then Clint chuckled, a low, dangerous laugh that sent shivers down Evelyn's spine. Blake frowned. What the hell is so funny? Clint took a slow step forward, towering over the captain. "I've dealt with men like you my whole life. Loudmouths who think power means they can do whatever they want." Blake's smug expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly covered it up. "I don't have time for this. Walk away, cowboy, before you regret it." Clint exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Before Blake could respond, Clint struck. It happened so fast that even Evelyn gasped. A single punch, clean, brutal, and precise, landed right in the captain's gut. Blake stumbled back, clutching his stomach, his eyes wide with shock. He coughed, trying to catch his breath. "You son of a—" Bam! Before he could finish, Clint's fist connected with his jaw. The force sent Blake crashing against the wall, knocking a painting off its hook. Evelyn stepped back, covering her mouth. She had seen Clint fight before, but this was different. This was personal. Blake groaned, wiping blood from his lip. His smugness was gone. Now he was furious. "I'll have you locked up for this," he snarled, pushing himself up. Clint cracked his knuckles. "Then you better get me in chains before I'm done with you." Blake's anger boiled over. With a furious roar, he lunged at Clint. But Clint was faster. With one swift move, he grabbed Blake by the collar and slammed him into the door of a storage room nearby. The captain let out a pained grunt as he hit the wood hard. Before he could recover, Clint shoved him inside and slammed the door shut behind them. Evelyn gasped. "Clint!" Clint turned his head slightly, his voice calm as ever. "Stay outside, Evelyn. This part ain't for you to see." Then, with one final push, he and Captain Blake disappeared into the room, a room where no one would hear the screams, and what happened next would shock the entire ship. The door slammed shut behind them. The storage room was dark, the only light coming from a flickering bulb above. Shelves lined with tools, ropes, and metal rods filled the space, a perfect battleground for what was about to happen. Captain Blake staggered backward, rubbing his sore jaw. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a mix of rage and fear. He had underestimated Clint Eastwood, and now he was trapped with him. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," Blake growled, reaching into his coat. Clint's eyes flickered to the silver glint of a knife as Blake pulled it out. The captain grinned wickedly. "You think you're tough, cowboy? Let's see how tough you are when I carve you up."
Clint didn't blink. He had stared down men with guns, fists, and blades before. Blake was just another fool with a weapon. Blake lunged forward, swinging the knife in a deadly arc, but Clint sidestepped with ease, grabbing a thick metal chain hanging from the shelf. Crack! Clint whipped the chain across Blake's wrist, sending the knife clattering to the floor. Blake roared in pain, clutching his injured hand. "You son of a—" Before he could finish, Clint struck. One brutal punch to the gut, another to the ribs. Blake gasped, staggering back. But Clint wasn't done. With a swift kick to the knee, Clint sent Blake crashing onto the hard floor. The captain groaned, coughing up blood. He tried to crawl away, but Clint grabbed the back of his collar, yanking him up. Clint's voice was dangerously low. "You like attacking women, don't you? Taking what isn't yours?" Blake's breath hitched. He opened his mouth to speak, but Clint slammed him against the wall. "I should throw you overboard and let the ocean deal with you." Blake's eyes widened in terror. "Wait, please, Clint wasn't listening. He grabbed a rope from the shelf and, with lightning speed, wrapped it around Blake's hands, tying them behind his back. Then, Clint dragged him to the door and kicked it open. The crew and passengers gasped as Clint stepped out, holding the beaten and bloodied captain by the collar. Evelyn's eyes widened. "Clint!" Clint threw Blake onto the ground like a sack of garbage. The captain groaned, barely able to move. The ship's security guards rushed over. "What the hell happened here?" Clint pointed at Blake. "Your captain just tried to assault a passenger. He's not fit to lead a rowboat, let alone this ship." Gasps spread through the crowd. The crew looked at each other, whispering. One of the senior officers, a grizzled man with decades of experience, stepped forward. He glanced at Blake, then at Clint. "I've had my doubts about Captain Blake for a long time," the officer muttered. "Now I see I should have acted sooner." He turned to his men. "Detain him. I'll be reporting this to the cruise line's headquarters." Blake's eyes widened in panic as the guards grabbed him. "No, you can't do this. I'm the captain. You hear me? I'm the—" A fist to the face from one of the guards shut him up. As they hauled him away, Clint turned to Evelyn. She rushed into his arms. "Are you okay?" Clint smirked. "I should be asking you that, darling." She nodded, smiling through her tears. "I'm fine, because of you." The senior officer sighed, shaking his head. "We owe you one, Mr. Eastwood. If it weren't for you, who knows what else that bastard would have gotten away with." Clint adjusted his jacket, his face calm as ever. "Just doing what needed to be done." The officer extended his hand. Clint shook it. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Clint and Evelyn stood at the railing of the ship, looking out at the vast, endless ocean. Evelyn exhaled, leaning into Clint's side. "Well, was hoping for a relaxing vacation." Clint chuckled. "You and me both." She smiled up at him. "But I wouldn't trade you for anything." Clint smirked. "Damn right." As the ship sailed forward, the moonlight reflecting off the waves, one thing was clear. Clint Eastwood had just reminded the world that justice always finds its way.